Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Wellness Masterclass, New Opportunities at the Intersection of Wellness, Sports, and Hospitality. I'm Jessie Brand, Manager of Operations and Logistics for the Global Wellness Summit and Institute. Please introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from. Some quick logistics. Feel free to choose between gallery or speaker view. Please keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking, and I have muted everyone already. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to our amazing host, Nancy Davis, Chief Creative Officer and Executive Director. Nancy, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Jessie, and welcome everyone. They all laughed at Christopher Columbus when he said the world was round. They all laughed when Edison recorded sound. If Ira Gershwin were around today, and wouldn't that be nice, and was tasked with writing a song about Susie Ellis, he would be searching for clever phrases that rhymed with wellness tourism. This is because among her many gifts, Susie makes discoveries in the wellness arena that turn out to be important, seminal elements in the industry and beyond. Indeed, they did all laugh when Susie brought up the idea of wellness tourism in 2013. But like most visionaries, she followed her gut, and here we are with wellness tourism, a vast, booming industry of its own. Susie has set her sights on a new intersection in the wellness world that she's focusing on, and it's the subject of today's Wellness Masterclass, the new opportunities at the intersection of wellness, sports, and hospitality. Susie has invited a few special guests to be part of the conversation, bringing this new area of interest to light. Susie will give a brief introduction to this and set the stage, and then her fellow presenters will each take a couple of minutes to describe what they are seeing and doing. We'll have some time at the end for Q&A, which I will moderate. Please use the chat function for more than just saying hello, although we love the warm and friendly interactions. Since we send a copy of the chat after the call along with the recording, please feel free to share links to relevant information, as well as your thoughts on a particular issue raised and your ideas on how wellness, sports, and hospitality might come together in new and creative ways. Since we will not have time for everyone to participate, the chat is a very important part of these calls. You should also know that the conversation about this new intersection of wellness, sports, and hospitality will continue in a big way at the 2023 Global Wellness Summit taking place in Qatar in early November. Without further ado, my colleague and very dear friend, Susie Ellis.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for that lovely introduction. You're so creative with them, and I appreciate it. And thank you to all of you who are here. We've had a huge group of people sign up for this, and it looks like a lot of you are on, so that's fantastic. It's encouraging to see so many because it shows that there's a real interest in this topic, and there's a lot of people on from various industries. So everyone coming together is so fascinating. So we are about what's ahead. And that's why we want to explore the opportunities at the intersection of wellness, sports, and hospitality. Fueled in part by scientific advancement and the observation that spa and wellness programs in hospitality are no longer just about massages and facials in designated areas, the very real arena of performance, medical testing, and recovery, and I would say especially recovery, is bringing new models into play. Fueled also by an obesity epidemic that has reached alarming levels, folding in participation in sports adds an element of training, competition, and, dare I say, fun that can be adjusted at various levels and for all ages. Inspiring participation can contribute significantly to global health, wellness, and the prevention of disease. So we think it's time to begin thinking outside the box. For example, how about we inspire spectators and fans to actually participate in sport, not just cheer from the sidelines? We are privileged to have with us today some leaders who also see this new intersection of wellness, sports, and hospitality as an opportunity to influence the way people view the hospitality experience. Nancy's going to do the introductions, and then I'll begin the conversation by asking some questions of our guests. Nancy, over to you.
Thanks, Susie. I'm going to introduce these amazing people and give each of them a little more than a minute to describe what they do that relates to the topic of the day. I'm going to ask in advance for your understanding about my timekeeping, as we want to keep this conversation moving along. Up first, Zoe Wall, Director, Wellness Global Operations from CSIRO, an interesting new concept that is debuting in Dubai at the end of this year. Zoe, tell us about CSIRO.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, ladies, for the warm introduction. So as the lady said, I'm Zoe. I'm the Global Director of Wellness for Kerzner International. For some of you that may know, we're the owner and operator of 4 brand verticals. So Atlantis Resorts, One and Only, Rare Finds, and the very exciting and upcoming CSIRO. So CSIRO will be the world's first fitness and recovery hotel brand, which has been created around 5 core pillars: fitness, nutrition, recovery, sleep, and mindfulness. With CSIRO, we are creating an immersive lifestyle destination, and we want to create life-changing experiences in state-of-the-art facilities. Our mission is to unlock mental and physical potential of our guests and members, and we want everyone to live without compromise. This surely will be a global brand that we're very excited to launch. We'll be opening in Dubai first, our home, and then Montenegro, and we'll be announcing further destinations shortly. We're very excited to be joining Susie and the team at the Global Wellness Summit in Dubai, where Philippe Zuber, our CEO, and Ramla Ali, our guest athlete, will be unveiling the envisioning of CSIRO.
Thank you so much, Zoe. One quick correction, it's the summit in Qatar. I think that was wishful thinking on your part in Dubai, but we'll be there one day soon for sure. Now we're going to head across the pond to Andy Preece, Director of the Borough Happold Sport and Entertainment Advisory Board in the UK. Andy, please tell us what you do related to this topic.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andy Preece. I'm a director of the Sport and Entertainment Advisory team at Borough Happold. For those of you who don't know us, Borough Happold are a global engineering, design, and advisory firm. We have quite a few offices in North America. Europe is our other significant market, and particularly the Middle East, which is where I'm actually doing most of my work at the moment. So although I'm UK-based, I'm working predominantly in the Middle East and particularly in Saudi Arabia. For those who are familiar with that market, I'm involved in the NEOM project, the Qiddiya project, Sports Boulevard, and also the Diriyah Gate project. And my area of interest, my area of specialism, I guess, and it's something I've been doing more or less my entire career, is sport tourism, which is obviously linked up to the theme today. So yes, we're generally talking about tourism, but I'm talking about tourism from a sporting perspective, which is, I guess, similar but different to wellness tourism, but we'll no doubt explore that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And everybody's doing so well on the timing. I really appreciate it. And apologies for drinking tea now and then, but I have a cold and I need to preserve my voice. Now back to the US and a dear friend and miracle worker, Patricia Lattis, a licensed physical therapist and author. Patricia, tell us what you do that focuses on sports in particular.
Sure. So I'm a holistic physical therapist, and I've been working with professional athletes and professional dancers my whole career. I've been one of the therapists at the US Open since 2002, and I am a consultant for all that time with the USTA, the WTA, the ATP, and I've been a therapist at the Olympics. So working with professional players, we have tried to elevate wellness. We've tried to elevate mental health awareness. We've tried to elevate performance. My piece is really about performance. And because I work with the pros, I also see recreational athletes, people who do pro-ams, junior athletes, collegiate. So I see the trajectory of people who are trying to break into sport. I happen to have a specialty in tennis, but I do see other sports as well. And it is really a market that has been not really tapped into yet, but the need is huge. The demand is huge. And I'm currently one of the consultants on building the USTA Center of Excellence. to really elevate the offerings that are offered in Lake Nona for the tennis athletes and for the whole entire family, the whole entire entourage, and seeing how we can bridge the gap between wellness, hospitality, the tourism, and also performance, which is the key piece. Recovery, performance, and elevating and optimizing your game, whatever your level is.
Patricia, thank you so much for that. And thank you also for the segue to Lake Nona, because now I'm going to introduce Craig Collin, President and COO of Tavistock Development Company, who heads up Lake Nona. Craig, tell us what you do related to wellness and sports.
Sure. So a little bit about Lake Nona. Tavistock Development is a private investment office, and we have a large focus on real estate. For those of you who don't know, Lake Nona is about 17 square miles. We have about 30,000 residents. But on this topic specifically, I think the biggest thing that we do around this is we are an integrator and collaborator, right? So we bring really, really smart minds together. And on the wellness front, it's sometimes a very traditional focus with hospitals and care, but there's a lot on prevention. There's a lot on innovation. So there is a great focus on wellness. In terms of sports, we've mentioned the USTA, which is home in Lake Nona, but numerous other activities in sports, integrated wellness center, partnership with the LPGA, and then to hospitality, a big focus with the hotels that we own and operate in Lake Nona, numerous restaurant, food and beverage, the large events, small events. So all in all, I think what we try to do is try and bring really, really smart, engaging people around this specific topic, and we let them excel. We bring people together that may not be working together, but at Lake Nona they do, and I think that is the secret sauce, if you will, to what makes Lake Nona excel.
Craig, thank you so much. And as evidenced by Patricia being involved, you definitely do bring smart people there. And both Susie and I have had the pleasure of being there, and it is an amazing place, growing all the time too. We're also grateful to have Catherine Johnston with us from our GWI research team. Catherine, I wonder if you could comment on the numbers, you know we love numbers, related to this intersection and the potential business opportunity.
Hi, everyone. So I'm one of the senior research fellows with the Global Wellness Institute. And, as you know, we put out the famous bubble charts and the wellness economy data that everyone knows and loves. So our data encompasses wellness tourism, which I think is, a topic that's at hand here. But our research that's focused on sports is actually falling within what we call the physical activity sector. That's a sector that we did a deep dive research study on in 2019, right before the pandemic. And what we did with that sector in that year is we actually greatly expanded it beyond what people tend to think about as exercise and fitness related to wellness. People tend to think gyms and yoga and fitness when we talk about wellness and physical activity. We now incorporate sports and active recreation as a huge sector within the physical activity sector. It's actually by far the largest in terms of spending and in terms of participation rates for people, doing physical activity and exercise type activities. So we can talk more about the numbers later, but it's a big and very important segment within physical activity for our research, and we think for expanding access to wellness for all.
Thank you, Catherine. Susie, time to get this conversation started. So over to you.
Well, thank you, Nancy. I'm going to start with you, Andy, because you are an expert in something that's maybe not a lot of us on the call are, and that is sports tourism. And I'm wondering if you can explain what is sports tourism and then give us some numbers, just so we can understand it a bit.
Yeah, no problem, Susie. I always worry slightly when somebody calls me an expert because it always feels like you're being set up but I'll do my best. I'll do my best to answer your question. So there is no sort of uniformly adopted definition of sport tourism, but the one that we use the most and the one that I think explains it most easily is basically it's any sort of travel that people might undertake to either play sport or take part in sport, and that can be both competitive and non-competitive. But it also covers traveling to go and watch sport as well. So you can be a sports tourist as a spectator. And sometimes it also embraces going to visit a sport attraction. So people might actually go and travel to see, you know, a famous stadium or some sort of attraction like that. But the key word is travel, because it's only when people go to places and travel that they then stay, and they therefore spend money on accommodation and restaurants, etc. And that's where you get the economic impact from sport tourism. So there isn't really such a thing as a domestic sport tourism market unless that also involves travel. So that's, you know, one way, I guess, of defining what we mean by sport tourism. In terms of scale, again, there's a lot of figures out there. It's hard to actually pin down an exact figure, but there are estimates that range from anything from sort of 300 billion US dollars to 800 billion US dollars as the global value of the sport tourism sector. So, you know, there's no doubt it is significant. Some organizations estimate that it actually accounts for 10% of all tourism. So I think it's a case where it was perhaps regarded in the past as a bit of a sort of minority sector, but I think it's definitely up there now as a significant part. You know, if you're growing tourism in your country, your city, wherever it might be, then, you know, sport tourism is going to be, if not already, a major part of that offer. And as I said before, you know, I'm working in the Middle East a lot, and it is just, you know, the money that is being invested there in sport tourism, in acquiring events, is just phenomenal. And that's, you know, well, that is for all sorts of reasons. But, you know, Dubai estimates that it generates something like $2 billion US dollars per annum economic impact from the sport events that they host. Now, they host events for other reasons too. That's just trying to give you a feel for the impact on the economy.
Well, those are some very large numbers, which is very interesting. And I'm wondering, you know, I just wanted to mention, well, there's a comment in the chat asking the question, does this include also, you know, sometimes we get the idea that it's for big sporting events, but this is like for, you know, triathlons or marathons or collegiate. So this is travel for any sporting event. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, if you travel to, you know, go and watch the Olympic Games or FIFA World Cup, then you're a sports tourist. But if you happen to travel somewhere to take part in your first, you know, 5K, 10K run or a triathlon or open water swim event, then you're a sports tourist as well. So that was obviously one of the reasons why, you know, those figures I mentioned are so big, because it embraces the full range of participants. You know, we're not just talking about the high performance end. It's your Joe average who just happens to want to travel to go, you know, and sometimes it's you're traveling as part of a group. You're a member of a club, or you know, if you're at university and you go on a sports tour of another country, you're a sports tourist. So it is definitely an all-embracing sector. If that helps explain.
Yes, and I think that's quite exciting. I mean, parents of kids that are in sports is, you know, part of this. I just wanted to mention what you were saying about the Middle East. You know, the UN is meeting in New York right now. Nancy tells me it's, you know, gridlock in New York because of it. And there was a headline actually just yesterday saying that Qatar's leader, Sheikh Tamim, his remarks were all about sports and how sports can unite the world. Of course, they, you know, hosted the World or the FIFA, but there's definitely a lot of talk, and we're seeing that in the Middle East about sports. So I think that's also very interesting. Catherine, let's go to you, because you have some numbers for wellness tourism, and these are some big numbers for sports tourism. How do they compare?
Yeah, so our data that we have right now is from the year 2020, the COVID year, which was, kind of everything was down. We're going to be putting out the new numbers with the summit in Qatar in November. So those are coming up. So I don't have those for you yet. But, as of 2020, wellness tourism, we had at 436 billion. And that's low. It shrank a lot by, say, 30% during the COVID year. So generally would be much higher than that. It's these tourism segments we talk about, sports tourism. How do we define that? Wellness tourism. I mean, there's adventure tourism, there's nature tourism, there's ecotourism. I mean, they all overlap. It's actually really hard to delineate, where the boundaries of one lie and, what fits in one bucket versus the other. They're all big and they're all growing. And I think they all reflect, the same kind of sets of values and interests by consumers and by tourists to do things that feel good for them and make them feel healthier, whether it's getting outside or doing a sport or, doing some other wellness or activity that feels good to them. So, and,
Thanks,
in terms of spending, well, so, the other piece of the spending, of course, is just what people spend on doing sports and doing physical activity, which is massive. It's bigger than wellness tourism. So the physical activity sector, the spending in that, we had at $738 billion in 2020. That's grown. It's larger now. That encompasses a lot of stuff. It also is clothing and shoe purchases and equipment and all those things that relate to doing, sports and physical activity. The actual spending on participation, and I'll give you the sports segment. I have my numbers right here. So we had $200 billion spent on participating in sports and active recreation in 2020. And, that's a big number. It's a lot larger than people spend on going to the gym and doing other types of fitness activities because it's just such a huge and diverse set of activities and people who are involved in it. So.
Thank you, Catherine. That is one thing that surprised me and I thought really educated me when you did that report on physical activity, is that there's a whole nother world beyond just fitness, beyond just going to gyms and exercising. And that's a large segment. So, so if I look at these numbers, it seems like when we talk about wellness tourism compared to sports tourism, that actually sports tourism is somewhat larger. So it's maybe not a surprise that we are all sort of looking at this and seeing some opportunities. I want to go to you, Zoe Wall from CSIRO. And I don't know if you were involved or if there's been a lot of research, but it seems like what you're coming up with, what you are introducing is like a perfect example of something that is taking advantage of this intersection. So tell us a little bit about maybe the thinking behind CSIRO and what you hope to, who your target market is.
So I think in terms of our target market, obviously, as we've explored, the audience is very wide and very varied, from kids, families, adults, single, couples, female. It really is a big audience. So we're really making sure that we cater for everybody, because of course everybody's fitness and wellness aspirations are different. You might have an athlete, for example, coming with a club, and obviously their expectations in terms of training and nutrition are obviously a lot higher. And then you might have somebody just starting their fitness journey. So we've really made sure when we've created this concept that we really do cater for all different scales and all different levels of fitness and recovery. And obviously remembering that it's all encompassing. So obviously fitness is obviously a huge trend right now, but there are so many components. You need the recovery, you need the sleep, you need the nutrition, you need all that encompassing pillars to really support it. So whereas typically with hotels, the gym, for example, will be considered an amenity and everything else, we're actually building the facilities that the fitness and recovery lab are at the heart of the hotel, and it transpires everywhere, from the way we've designed the rooms with a sleep expert, from the way we've worked with a nutritionist for the food menus and the F&B experience, from the way that we've collaborated with our athletes. So AC Milan, Ramla Ali, Adam Peaty are just a few of the world-class athletes. And we've really spent a lot of time with them researching, going into the science and really discovering what they do really well and how we can take that and make it approachable for the everyday guest and user. And obviously with that, we're not just targeting hotel guests, it's also community, residents, people living in those local areas. We really want to create a destination that brings people and obviously throughout, and they keep coming back.
Thank you, Zoe. That's very interesting. And it makes sense that you would appeal beyond just your hotel guests. And by the way, someone asked for the link to Cyro. I think it's cyrohotels.com. You can put it in the chat. But anyway, it's something to look at. And they have a very iconic building. So I think that's also eye-catching. What you mentioned, and let me go to Craig, because Craig, you at Lake Nona have been maybe one of the first movers in this area. And the idea of a performance place that caters not only to people who are staying there and living there, but you know, a community. Tell us a little bit about Lake Nona for those who don't know about it. I think it's extraordinary. I've been there a few times, and you have hospitals, you have, you know, schools, you have, you know, you tell the story.
Well, you're our best salesperson. So listen, what I would tell you, it's a work in process. I don't believe we've achieved what we've really sought out to achieve yet, although I think we've made great strides in many ways. For those of you who haven't been here, I'd rather focus on maybe what's next for us, or like what we thought of in the last year, or what's coming. Because it is a very big community. It's a very diverse community. It's a very collaborative community with lots of partners, probably many on this call. So I think what's really exciting us about this specific topic is trying to integrate our hotels, our residents, our businesses. And the one thing that Andy brought up that I thought was very, very key is it's all scales. It's the professional athlete to the amateur athlete. The USTA gets 500,000 visitors a year to their national campus. That's only one component. And I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it almost a frictionless experience to live here or to visit here. So the idea that our 234 brand new hotel has a relationship with 135,000 square foot integrated wellness center. So when people come, it's not isolated, it's frictionless, it's easy to do. They're moving around on our autonomous vehicle if they don't. So it's a really holistic view of the whole thing. And the other thing I want to point out, so we are a large mixed-use development, 17 square miles. We attract a lot of businesses. A lot of companies who are choosing to relocate. This is a question they're asking about. This is a question they're asking about for their employees, right? What are you doing? What are you providing in this area? And it's not, are you providing these specific standalone things, but how are you tying it together as a community? And the last thing, and then Nancy's going to tell me to be quiet, but I would say another big thing that we're really focused on is affordability. Right? Getting the idea of what we're talking about and what everyone on this call is engaged in to all levels of society. And that's a very, very different approach. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring that approach to all 30,000 residents and roughly 17-ish million visitors to Lake Nona a year. And what we're trying to do is say, hey, how are we providing it at every level of affordability and approachability? And those are the things I think that we're focused on today to try and improve what we have.
Craig, thank you so much. And thank you for bringing up the issue of affordability, because, you know, this whole idea of sports and wellness and hospitality, you know, I guess I'm familiar with some research that was done in the UK that showed that, you know, you'd think, oh, if sports are inspiring people to get involved as spectators, that, you know, this would trickle down and they would become more active and therefore more healthy. And I think the research actually showed that is not the case. So that's why I think we all have to maybe put creative hats on. How do we get more people to, engage? And affordability is clearly one of the issues. I'm going to go to you, Patricia, because you, of all people, are in the sports world, but you're also in the wellness world. So tell us what you're seeing, and in particular, what are we getting wrong? And you mentioned something about families and such, but tell us your thoughts.
So basically, I'm looking at it from the user because they're in my office complaining that they're traveling all over the world for these tournaments, whether they're at the pro level, collegiate level, or junior level, and amateur level as well. There are people that just love to go and have good competition. It's what really drives their engine and gives them their purpose in life. And as it was mentioned before, this is amplifying people's wellness in a community style, which is hugely beneficial and keeps people doing it for longer. And the sport that I focus on, which is tennis, which is longevity, people are traveling at all ages to go around the world. It's estimated 175 million people travel for collegiate tournaments and amateur tournaments. And so when you have that many people, and that's not talking about the low-level juniors, we're not talking about all sorts of the on the rise kind of kids that are going to regional tournaments, national tournaments, and they're traveling. And sometimes there is no place to stay that offers what they normally would do, not even a gym sometimes in the hotels that are offered. They're wanting to stay well, and sometimes they have to stay for 2 to 3 weeks. So we're looking at a time where family, entourage, maybe they have a coach with them, a physical therapist that travels with them, an acupuncturist. They're getting some of their own care because they cannot find it where they are normally. And so I think there is a huge need and a huge demand. And of course, at the pro level, you can stay at various tournaments. Some of them are, kind of paired with each tournament. But we're looking at greater offerings for wellness, greater offerings for spa. I can't tell you how many parents come to me and say, if this tournament, I know he's going to get far into the tournament. We're going to be there for 2 weeks and there's nothing for me to do. I'm going to sit in my hotel and do the exercises that I have to do, but there's nothing for me to do. And I would love it if my kid could run into a cold plunge. I have to sit there and go to some local store many miles away, get the ice, put it in the bath. So these are real tangible things that are hugely impactful, not only on the child's performance, the collegiate, the professional's performance, but also on the family and their experience. And they're doing it all year long.
Patricia,
so
that's
huge market.
Music to the ears of all the people here, because there's lots of opportunity there.
Right.
And speaking of teams being able to go somewhere and have facilities, I am very aware that Zulal, which is in Qatar, this is the destination spa by Shivasam that is actually going to be part of our Global Wellness Summit. They hosted the German soccer team during the FIFA. And so when I heard that, I thought, that just makes a lot of sense for a team to come and stay at a facility that has so much to offer. Of course, they have their own coaches and, even therapists and so on. But to be at a place, I just think there's a lot of opportunity for more destination spas to host teams. And like you said, Patricia, it's not just top. There's just lots and lots of teams. So I also wanted to mention that, Technogym, most of you are familiar with Technogym. They're an organization, as you know, in Italy, we actually had a summit there a few years ago. And, Mirio, who's also going to be at the summit, they've been involved with the Olympics very visibly for many, many years. And I think that's been also inspiring. I mean, they call themselves a wellness company, and yet they've been so visible at the Olympics. I think they provide the equipment that the Olympians use. And so we've already got some things happening between sports and wellness there. And I should also mention, because I think Janie Miller might be on this call. She's from Octagon. She represents Simone Biles. And Simone Biles, you all know, hopefully, that she's a gymnast, Olympian. She's going to be at our summit in Qatar. And what I found, we really wanted her to be there because not because of her sport, but because of her advocacy for mental health. And that is what she's going to be talking about. I get to interview her, and I'm going to ask Nancy for her help because she's the best interviewer. But anyway, we are going to have Simone Biles. But her advocacy for mental health is it's beyond just the sport of gymnastics. And I don't know, did any of you see the recent announcement that that Amman Resorts has now has a association with Maria Sharapova. And I thought that was interesting that Maria is not just about tennis, she's now about doing wellness retreats at the Amman Resorts. So that's just another example. Nancy, I'm going to send it over to you because you probably want to open it up for some questions.
I absolutely would love to. And I'm sure there are plenty. And so I'm going to ask you if you have a question, if you would please, in the reactions tab on your Zoom platform, there's a raised hand, and you can see that Marcus has already done it perfectly, a virtual raised hand. If you would do that, I'll call on you. And when I do, unmute yourself. You've got 30 seconds to just say who you are and ask your question. We want to get to as many people as possible. So thank you for your cooperation. Marcus, go ahead.
Hi, thank you, everyone. Patricia, a question to you. I'm a former pro tennis player and college tennis player, and I share your views and your pain with coming to smaller tournaments. And if there's a hotel, you're lucky. Usually, staying in hostels.
Marcus, I'm going to ask you
like
just ask your question.
Yeah, sure. How do you see that this can improve on the tennis circuit? I notice PTPA and so forth is trying to do better things, but how do you see that in a sport where so few people actually can make a living, and how can this change with the force of? Yeah, happy to hear that.
Thank you so much for your question, and congrats. I think one of the huge thing is going to be to get a company that would specialize more in spa offerings. We talk about mental health, and these kids, pros, and amateurs and collegiate players are going back to a dark room, and that has no real outlet. They're hopefully at a tennis center or a site that has a fuller gym offering, somewhere where they can, continue their training. But the hospitality and spa piece is always missing. And if we did have that, then we could hopefully provide for a better balanced athlete. So for me, I come from the performance side. I'm the problem solver when someone's career is not going well and we're trying to figure out the problem. So how do I see it happening? I think it's going to have to be a scaled offering, few things that are offered in either pop-up hotels or smaller, because you're looking at something that it could be in a big city, it could be in a small city or a town. So it's really variable. But I do feel that even if we started with a few offerings at some of the regional locations, people would travel for it. And I think it would be really amplifying performance, which then amplifies viewership, which then amplifies money in that sector.
Thank you. Thank you, Patricia. Michael, and please just your name and your question.
Thanks, Nancy. My name's Michael Piscos. I'm an audiologist who focuses on the impact of noise and sound wellness on overall well-being. And sound and noise often get overlooked in these conversations.
And your question is?
So I'm curious if noise and sound wellness are considered in performance recovery, and if so, how?
And who's the question to?
Really to Patricia and Zoe and anyone else who might have some insight.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Who would like to tackle that one? Zoe, do you want to talk
quickly?
About,
Zoe,
that?
Please.
Hang on one second, Patricia. Maybe Zoe, did you take that into account in your CSIRO, in building CSIROs?
Yeah, so especially from the room component perspective, we've really focused on soundproofing, lighting, blackouts, etc., to really create the perfect environment to promote sleep. Because obviously a big limiting factor, especially in sports and fitness, is the fact people are not recovering. It obviously then stops them from performing. Sleep is a big issue, obviously, when you're traveling because you're out of routine, jet lag, etc. So we've really focused a lot in terms of the soundproofing, the mattress that we use, the lighting, etc., to really create that perfect environment.
Thank you, Zoe. And Patricia, quickly, did you want to add to that?
All I was going to say was, yeah, because they're doing it on their own. They're bringing noise machines, and it's a very huge stimulant to that sympathetic system, which they need to calm down, especially during competition. So this is a huge aspect of what should be offered at such locations.
Nancy, could I add one real quick thing?
Sure.
We have a pilot house at Lake Nona that we've had for years, wellness home built on innovation and technology. And what we try to do, Doctor, is look at these ideas, bring these people in who are rethinking, how do we sleep? What are the materials we use? How do we react to them? What is the lighting? I can't tell you we definitely have an answer, but it's something that we constantly look at the Witt House and try and figure out who are the people rethinking, living in homes and in commercial businesses as well, and what can we do to advance it? So that's something we're studying as well.
Craig, what does WIT stand for?
Wellness home built on innovation and technology. Now you could go online and look at it, and we're trying to rethink homes and how well they can be constructed and how well we can live in them.
Thank you. And Craig, if you can put that in the chat. Nancy, I just wanted to interject. There's someone on the call, I don't know if she wants to contribute, but her name is Anna West. She's from Switzerland, and I met her at the EHL board meeting, and she's written a book called Sleep to Perform. And she has a consultancy for high performance athletes, and I think it's beyond athletes. Anyway, if she's here, maybe she wants to comment. And if not, Anna, please put your website in the chat.
So
Anna,
Susie, just to follow on from that, we actually collaborated.
Yeah,
we collaborated with Anna.
I was laughing, Zoe, when I saw you on the call and you started speaking. Yeah, my name is Anna West, and I'm working with sleep. I'm a sleep specialist, and I work with high-level athletes. And we talk about high-level athletes, but I completely agree with Patricia in the sense that there's no other and more impactful recovery modality than sleep. And it is extremely important, even when you travel on low budgets, etc., that sleep and where sleep has an opportunity to take place, that those things are taken into account when you actually take players there or athletes there. And Patricia, you had a really good comment as well, because a lot of players, athletes will have a lot of time. And a lot of time spent in a very poor facility can definitely lead to a lot of mental aspects. And the first place where you will actually see it is because players can't sleep. They can't fall asleep because they spent too much time in poor hotel facilities that do not accommodate the sleep factor that they actually need. So, but I don't want to intrude that. It's a very interesting debate, and I have a lot to say, but I think I will just listen in.
Thank you, Anna. Please put your information in the chat so people can connect.
Sure.
So Nancy, back to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all. And Anna, thank you so much for jumping in there. Dan, over to you if you'll unmute and take 30 seconds to ask your question.
Thank you. Yeah, quickly, I'm involved with a project here in Los Angeles we've been working on called Fit Town Jam. Question is, the Olympics are coming, 24 in Paris, LA 28. What are we doing to tell our story? And probably to Patricia to begin with.
I think the story is of a commitment as the whole world is starting to commit to a greater well athlete from a mental health perspective, from a physical perspective, and also as a inspiration for the world, because a lot of people will get inspired to be more well when they actually visibly see that in front of them. So featuring some of these athletes like Breakpoint did, showing how they are taking care of themselves, what it does take to succeed at such a high level in sport. Even if you're an amateur, even if you're someone that's just thinking of entering into a fitness program, you look at that and it inspires you, and that increases behavior change. Now, from a perspective of supporting the athlete, there is no greater, and I've been saying this for years because I've always wanted my worlds to collide, and it seems to be happening, so I'm quite excited, is how can we figured it out on the wellness side. The sports side has kind of figured it out, but they don't have the overarching piece to keep that kind of health of that athlete on a 360 degrees of wellness going. You hear often, I just fell apart mentally, you know, or this person just, you know, tore their Achilles. I mean, we have 2 injuries in the NFL. They just started, you know, so there's a performance piece that needs to be linked with the wellness piece, because if that person was just a little underhydrated or didn't really sleep well that night, or something happened and a stressor came on them, that is going to decline performance, decline viewership, and the Olympics won't be as fun when you have some of the top ones out, right? So
okay, Patricia, I'm going to just interrupt you to keep the answer short too. Andy, you want to comment on this? I was going to go to you to talk about this.
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. There is actually quite a lot of research that says that when you host the Olympic Games, the impact on your tourism visitation is actually either neutral, or in some cases it has been negative. And that is because especially when the games are being hosted, people's perception is, you know, too expensive, overpriced, too busy, all those things. And it does deter some of your regular visitors. Sometimes they go somewhere else and they don't actually come back. And it's a particular issue that was found in the Caribbean when they hosted the Cricket World Cup in 2007 in Barbados. A lot of their regular visitors didn't go, you know, because they were hosting that event. They went somewhere else and they just never ended up going back. So, and most Olympic host cities actually benefit in the couple of years before the games in terms of tourism than they do during the event itself. So it's all about timing, I guess, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying you won't get tourism benefit from hosting the Olympics, but it's not perhaps when people most expect it.
That's fascinating to hear that. Wow. Okay, Bob Dykstra, over to you. 30 seconds for your question, please.
Has anybody really looked at the glamping industry? It's growing, and what we're looking at doing, in not just glamping, but adding art classes, music classes, culinary cooking classes, and in some areas, hunting and fishing are huge activities to get people back to nature. I haven't heard
your
anybody
question really about the hospitality aspect that's glamping and bringing bringing all this together.
I might be able to take this one on. So a good example of maybe of what we're trying to do is in Central Florida, we have a large master plan community, about 25 square miles, called Sunbridge. And it really is based on a lot of nature, sustainability. And one of the things we're looking for the person that asked the question is, or looking to do, is have these ideas of overnight stays, right? That having a connection with nature, the idea of not having, hey, nature's over there in a box, go, you know, you can look at it, but you can't go in it, and starting to engage the people. So glamping, day trips into some of the wildlife preserve areas, so things along those lines. I think it's a great opportunity as people want to reconnect with nature. So
okay,
yes.
Thank you so much. And that's just a little bit off topic, but Susie, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to point out a few people who are on the call who I'd like to have add your thoughts in the chat, because they're important in terms of their background. Steve Meyer from the National Academy of Sports Medicine. Jonathan Leary, if he's on, he's the CEO and founder of Remedy Place in New York. Very, very cutting edge, getting a lot of publicity, and definitely taking this recovery piece. Andrew Barnard from The Body Holiday. I know you're doing, you've always had athletes as part of your trainers. And Dr. Vishal Patel from Sensi, Sensi's doing some interesting things with athletes that I think is worth looking at. And John Stanton of Chosen Experiences, I have heard you're doing something with ultra sports and wellness. I don't know what that is. And Rue Drever from Abbott. That's the company with medical devices, and you are from Sports Ventures. So I think it's very interesting. I haven't spoken with you yet, but I know you'll be at the summit, so I look forward. And Mia Caricos, who has been in both the sports world and the wellness world and hospitality. Tammy Peo from Carolyn, she works with the Miami Heat. Abhishek John with Arch Amenities, and Todd Shaw with Fountain Life. And all of these companies in different ways are working somewhere in this arena. So I just wanted to ask you to please add your thoughts in the chat, because I know we won't have time. So Nancy, over to you.
Thank you, Susie. Thanks so much. And Fountain Life, of course, is at Lake Nona as well. So all the dots are connecting. Okay, Rich, if you would unmute, take 30 seconds and ask your question.
Hi, Rich Edwards from Miami, Florida. Craig, this question is for you, being a little further south in Lake Nona. I deal with a lot of developers of hotels and a lot of owners of hotels. They're looking to retrofit or looking to add characteristics that are good for tourism, sports, and hospitality. As you know, Miami's a hub for all of those.
Please just ask your question, Rich. Thanks.
What are your must-haves for retrofitting hotels, or what are the must-haves for developing?
Great, thank you. And once you're done asking your question, please lower your hand in the same reactions place so that others move up. Thank you.
Okay, I would say quickly must-haves would be in this topic, some relation to sports activities. We have a big development in Fort Lauderdale called Pier 66. So if I take that as a bit of a case study, I look at that and say, we want to have more than facials at the spa. We want more wellness focus. We want integration with sport activities at the hotel, but we really want partnerships with sports activities that people can engage in and around the area. So I don't think we look at hotels as like you come in the walls and everything is there with you within the walls. We want to provide a better experience, but we also want to attract and partner with great people in the vicinity to really provide a greater experience and an expanded experience. And that goes with what we're trying to do at Pier 66 in Fort Lauderdale. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Craig.
Thank you.
Nikos, if you would unmute and ask your question, 30 seconds.
Yeah, hi, I'm Nikos Kouroumenas from Athens, Greece. My question is whether we should, having been an elite athlete and having heard everything you've said, shouldn't we differentiate between elite athletes as a sports or a wellness tourist and the average person as a wellness tourist or sports tourist? Because there's a huge difference between their needs and how we should look at them as a target group.
Who would like to take that one? Andy?
Get things started. So yeah, I agree, Nikos. I think generally we actually try and avoid using the term elite. I know some countries still do, but it brings about a certain misconception, I think, about that group of people. So when we're talking about athletes, we tend to use the term high performing individuals or high performance sport. But you can be a high performance amateur as well, to be honest. And some of the projects that I'm working on, they're looking to attract high performance amateurs. You don't have to be a full-time athlete to want to improve your performance in what it is that you do. And you could argue you've got every right to access the facilities and services that a professional athlete or whatever you want to call them. So yeah, terminology. I think in answer to your question, terminology is important, because terminology can create the wrong perception about what something is about, or who it's appealing to, or who it's trying to attract. And I think the word elite has that connotation for many people, and therefore generally it's something we try and avoid using.
Okay,
thank you. Want to just one second?
There
is something to be said about the attractability. That's why Maria Sharapova has gone into Amman, is because the people who are playing very well and that they may not be elite or professional players, they want to be around that higher level person. And that is very attractive for that offering or that space. And I think the differentiating factor should really be about juniors and anybody that's like an adult athlete, because that I think spans it a little bit better, because the needs of a junior is very different than the needs of an adult.
I completely
Okay,
agree with Patricia.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. Susie, you wanted to say something?
Well, this is where, this topic of definitions, and I'm throwing it to Catherine. This is where we as a group, and there's many pages of people on this call. This is where we can come together and perhaps, come together with some new thinking, some ideas on what would be the appropriate vocabulary that might help us all. Catherine, maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because you've done this a lot, when we talked about wellness tourism, when we talked about wellness real estate, vocabulary and terminology. What would it take for the sports world and the wellness world and hospitality to maybe agree a little bit more on what would be the best vocabulary for the ultimate goal of helping more people get healthy?
That's a good question. I think that the vocabulary question can span a wide range of topics, right? I know that we're talking now about elite or high performance athletes versus amateurs. And, I think if you're a business, obviously, you're going to be positioning yourself in one of those buckets and targeting your market, and hopefully using I think there's some background noise or something on here, but it's not coming from my end. So you got to use the vocabulary that targets the market you're going after. I think I would actually, taking a step back from that, and I think I saw actually a comment in the chat box asking too about, okay, well, what do we say when we say sports versus recreation? That's another terminology that gets thrown around. Sports, we know what sports are. They usually involve a competitive aspect. It can be team sports, individual sports. Recreation, and we include recreation at the Global Wellness Institute in the same bucket as sports, because there's a whole continuum of things that people do that includes walking for exercise, running, different types of boating, skiing. Those can be competitive sports. They can also be recreational activities, martial arts, dance. There's a recreation aspect to those. There's a health and fitness and, wellness aspect to them. There can also
Catherine,
be
I'm so sorry. I'm going to ask you to just wrap up your comment because we're running out of time.
Yeah. So, the definitions are challenging, but, you got to, as a business, you have to do, I think, what's right for your target market. When you're talking from a researcher perspective, it's a little different.
So listen, thank you all. I know there are questions we don't have time to get to them. We could go on for hours, but we're nearly at the end and we do like to run things on time. I'm going to throw it to Susie for the final minute to give us a final thought, and then we'll thank everybody.
Well, thank you, Nancy. And I just want to mention to Jesse, if you could keep this open a little bit past our time, so if anybody wants to add anything else to the chat, they would have a chance to do that. Just keep it open for like one more minute. When Nancy started off talking about wellness tourism and how, it was something we identified, 10 years ago. And now it's everywhere and, countries are talking about it. It reminds me of one thing that really helped is that we all did something. It's not enough for just Cyro to do a great brand in this direction, or for Craig, at Lake Nona, but each of us can do something about sports in whatever we're doing. And then we just start talking about this, and together, then we will move the needle, and it will move in a really positive direction. But everybody has to kind of do their thing in whatever business they're in. And I think, I would say I'm even more excited about it than I was when I thought, I think this is going to be a real great opportunity for a lot of people. So that's it for me, Nancy.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, especially our special guests. And this conversation, I will remind you again, continues at the summit in Qatar. And not only will we have Simone Biles, but we will also have Ramla Ali, thanks to the people at Cyro. And she is a female boxer, Olympian, and would be amazing. So we're really serious about this, and we thank you all for everything. You'll receive notes, chats, and recordings.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And please, I put my email in the chat if you want to send me information that I should include in the post call email. Feel free to email me, and we will leave the chat open for just a little bit longer, or the call on. So thank you, everyone. Fantastic call. And I can't believe how active the chat was.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Okay, I'm gonna close the call now. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.